Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Charli K. Matthews, and I am excited about today. Anytime that I get to meet people out in industry doing amazing things, I like to share them with you. Today's no different. And so, Todd, just jump on here and introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for that. So, Todd Bush, I run Decarbonfuse, and we are a platform to find projects, a lot of clean energy projects, and our focus right now seems to be in carbon capture around natural gas, power, and I'd say even some of the ethanol producers. So, it's definitely an exciting time on the industry, and thank you for connecting here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for being here and doing that important work. I can't wait to dive into that. But before we do, how does one find themselves getting into the industry around this kind of decarbonization?
Yeah, so it's definitely been an interesting journey for me. I started my kind of energy career at Chevron, running kind of lean operations and digital projects, and that gave me good exposure to operations and different aspects of the business. And then I got kind of an entrepreneurial bug and joined a couple smaller companies that were more focused on, I'll say, kind of market intelligence, but then within energy and working with companies on the horsepower side, so frac pumps, frac um, fleets, and really getting into what that's happening or what's happening there with kind of advancing pumps on that perspective. And as I kind of explored a lot of emissions opportunities, began getting involved with kind of emission reduction opportunities. So that those first kind of projects were around taking conventional frac fleets and electrifying them, and that got me kind of introduced to some of the decarbonization efforts that were happening more broadly. And when I left kind of the market intelligence firm, then decided to jump straight into carbon capture and electrification for mostly industrial type of use cases. So a lot of power companies, oil and gas, obviously, as well as some of the ethanol producers and natural gas companies that are out there that were trying to figure out a way to decarbonize operations and kind of figure out the low carbon fuel markets and other low carbon premium products.
Well, I would say that we are still trying to figure it out, right? There's so much
Yeah.
there that people are trying to learn and know. But having come from, Chevron and kind of this refining side and then going into upstream, it sounds like kind of across the gamut of being able to understand the energy market. And I think that that's really important to be able to do any of the work that you're talking about now. So when I had a little run in that space. We're still in that space, but really being able to understand fracking and kind of how we can protect the environment in that industry, but seeing some of that. So I think I won't say any company or anything like that, but like you're involved in it, so you can kind of see where maybe the equipment is failing, or maybe like human practices get in the way. Is it kind of that knowledge that sent you on the track of being able to see some of the advantages of carbon capture?
Yes, and so one of the early projects that I had at Chevron was a what's called a water alternating gas asset, but essentially where they're injecting CO2, and so getting kind of that little peek inside of what the company was doing as it was buying CO2, understanding what to do with it and how they were injecting it over time to produce more oil was pretty fascinating, and seeing that at the actual kind of asset level, and then how that flowed to some of the economics was fascinating from my point of view, just because I'd never experienced that side. And then as fast forward probably 10, 15 years, got the opportunity to start working with a couple of these decarbonization projects that were looking at CO2 as a commodity and CO2 or emissions as a lever to reduce their emission intensity, as well as the opportunity to turn CO2 into a commodity for their business or even another revenue stream.
Well, that's one of
Just
the
found
things that
fascinating.
one of the things we talk about the Fluid Sealing Association that I learned this like the fugitive emissions, and the fugitive emissions is the ones that we can actually do something about with the equipment. And I mean, well, there's tons of emissions that happen out there, y'all. But the fugitive, it's like, okay, if you run the equipment or you design the equipment in a way, then you can capture this instead of just burning it off or letting it escape into the air. It has value. Can you talk,
Yes.
just explain that a little bit better to our audience?
Yeah, I'll go with maybe a compressor example, just because there are a number of companies looking at that right now and trying to figure out what they can do. So, compressors obviously emit some CO2, and they're powering and providing such an important piece of the infrastructure along oil, gas, power. There's so many opportunities, but with compressors, if you're able to take that CO2 and capture it at the point source, and so this is a much smaller amount of CO2 typically, but a number of companies are looking at, okay, if I'm capturing the CO2 and I have my compressor units, compressor stations out there in the field, is there a way that I can gather that CO2 into a volume where maybe I can sell it back to an oil and gas company. Maybe I can take that CO2 and turn it into a synthetic fuel of some kind, combine it with another potential gas, and see if I can create almost a low carbon fuel that way. And a number of those kind of new technologies are working alongside compressor manufacturers to figure out, okay, if we can do this at a small scale and make it economic, then deploying it across kind of an install base that is pretty large within oil and gas and pipelines, you can do something pretty unique. And so that's one that's right now on the cusp of a handful of companies looking at it and trying to figure out what they can do with those fugitive emissions and collect them or even reuse them in some way.
Yeah, and that's what we have to do. We're thinking about how can we eliminate the waste of that too. So if we're doing that and generating some, much needed cash flow, awesome, right?
Right.
So I wanted to just ping you a little bit about the entrepreneur bug because I'm an entrepreneur and I just, it's not for everybody. But once you kind of
Yeah.
build that business and you're kind of in it, I'm just fascinated and kind of want to hear what did you want to do out of that, or what made you kind of want to go on that journey?
Yeah. There's yeah, it's such an interesting question because there's probably a number of different ways I can answer it, right? I think for me at the time, it was about especially the first company that I built. I just wanted to start um, something from scratch, build it and grow it. There was a opportunity where I had a handful of potential customers that I knew. I felt like we could get in the door at certain companies. And so going through that the first time, definitely, it was very much a kind of a bootstrapped business, and we self-funded it and got to, you know, thousands of customers and 20 to 30,000 kind of users. And so that was an exciting thing to do and build. And the second time around, I wanted to be a little more practical about it, and again, self-funded Decarbonfuse and work with a little bit of a larger team to kind of build it out. And now it's been more about kind of distribution and meeting. I'd say meeting the needs of kind of where the markets are going and meeting some of the customers where there really were. There's a great opportunity with turning CO2 into a commodity and another revenue stream. And so being able to kind of be a part of that story for a number of kind of project developers and also other industries where they're maturing and they want to find that new source of revenue. It's been fun and exciting trip along the way.
Yeah, and I can relate on the, you know, business, the I guess creating a business from nothing, kind of like almost a rush to get it started and going and everything. my business plan is completely different today as it was when I started, right? So I think
Mhm.
we're in year 14, 15. I hadn't done the math right now, which year we're in, but you know, moving and our customers kind of tell us where to go, right? And what they need. And so that's exactly what you're doing, solving a problem for your customers. Because again, they don't know all this knowledge. You were kind of placed in these industries and learning as you go, that then came up with this great business idea. But also just kind of probably being fascinated with building the kind of creation, the building, the equipment side of things too, and
Yep.
the operation side ties into that. So yeah, I can totally see that. Well, what kind of projects are you working on now? I know he's touched on a couple, but is there any other ones that you want to share?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we recently put on kind of a carbon management workshop in Houston, and it was great to get a number of customers and colleagues and friends in the same room talking about what you can do with not only carbon capture but also the utilization, so that path to revenue, and then sequestration as well. So there's a number of projects that we're working on, but one that comes to mind specifically right now is the we're working on a blue ammonia project, and so it's going to be a larger infrastructure type of project, but it involves collecting CO2 at the ammonia facility and sequestering it so that you get quote unquote blue ammonia, and you can sell that at a premium. And so that project is moving forward pretty quickly and about to get financing and kind of developing it from the ground up, which has been a new experience for me and one that I feel like wanted to go through from just experiencing all the energy kind of infrastructure side. So that one's pretty exciting. And then I'll throw out another one too because I feel like there are a number of kind of ethanol producers that are out there, and also on the kind of an equipment side, they have kind of their own niche needs and market. So we're doing kind of a CO2 utilization project for an ethanol producer to be able to basically say, all right, this is a new revenue source for you, and you're already doing some capturing of the CO2, and now the way that we're actually able to capture and utilize it, then we can lower the carbon intensity of the facility. So you start seeing these real results coming from, some coming from a concept from the executive and turning that into kind of a real delivered end result, which has been fun and great to see.
Yeah, and that's what they need. So many facilities, so many different industries. They need that entrepreneur spirit. I'll just say that to come in and see
Yeah.
it differently, right? To look outside industry, a typical industry. We just need that across the board. We've got to find solutions for this. So I love that. I love that you're able to, yeah, see the results happening, like that you can actually point to, and we'll have case studies to help other people along the way. It's going to be so great. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you. And there's, of course, I feel like I couldn't leave the conversation without talking about like data centers and power and AI, because those are projects that are there's so many that have been announced recently, and a lot of large power projects in Louisiana, in Dallas, along the Gulf Coast, even in the Midwest. We're seeing so many data center projects all looking at kind of AI and the increase in power needs. And so I feel like with the change in the administration, the focus on generating electricity, I think that's another angle for clean energy projects as well as carbon capture and even some of the traditional kind of natural gas producers to really make a dent in the coming years, we'll say, for those projects.
Yes. You mentioned electrification earlier. Can you talk about that a little bit too?
Yeah,
This is from my own knowledge too. I'm fascinated with this, but I don't quite understand it fully, like how it can be utilized. Just from your knowledge example, do you mind?
yeah, yeah. No, it's I'd say probably the easiest one and the one that I have the most knowledge on is the conventional frac pumps to electric pumps, where you have. So if you think of if you've ever seen a picture of a frac fleet that's in West Texas or the Appalachia, it's generally call it 20, almost like 20 semis that are all lined up. You have frac pumps and power ends right there, providing all of the pressure so that you can push fluid and sand downhole and actually frac. And what electrification has done for those conventional frac fleets is decrease the number of units on site, so decrease the number of pumps that you're required, but you're operating at a kind of a higher, I'll say, probably more reliable because you have some additional power on site, as well as you lower the footprint and obviously decrease the emissions. And that's been a great example, really for upstream oil and gas to basically show, okay, we're going to decrease the kind of the emissions per barrel of oil that we produce is one great example. And then I've seen others along the midstream side do this with different compressors. So instead of powering compressors with, we'll call it either natural gas or some other source, be able to look at solar or potentially wind as a way to power some of those compressors. And then obviously they have to have some kind of, a few will have to have kind of a battery storage system associated to it. So I feel like that's another really good example of just kind of electrification in the field, and even I feel like now even more so, there's a number of initiatives within industry, within kind of the industrial facilities, where you're looking at electrification to kind of reduce the footprint or improve emissions, or even begin cutting costs.
Thank you so much. I feel like I could ask you anything, and you're super knowledgeable in this space. So, y'all keep that in mind. And so, thank you for that. And, I think, as we do move forward, in industry, and just you were talking to AI too, like there's so many things that we just have to kind of practice and learn, and doing it on a small scale before we can kind of tackle some big projects. Um, that's where we start. So y'all, I encourage y'all to look into some of this. If you have questions, Todd is a great resource. What keeps you kind of motivated and interested in this energy space?
Oh wow! So I love. There's a chart that I used to use all the time. I haven't used it in a while, but there's an energy demand chart that just always goes up and to the right, and it's one of the things that kind of at the core, I feel like there's energy demand probably will never decrease, and so there's that just brings forward so many opportunities. And think of industrial facilities that need power on site, and thinking about what they can do kind of to control their power source, and if it's behind the meter or something for that facility, as well as the I'll call it all of the technology and the skill sets needed to produce energy in general. So, whether you're thinking of oil or natural gas or even nuclear, or thinking about how we start changing into bringing new commodities to market, I feel like that's it's there's always something new to learn, and you can study some of these things for a long time, and then once you get that first little project to kind of move forward, you can just see how you can start supporting kind of that energy demand, as well as I think there's been a number of conversations about kind of our energy security, and bolstering that in the U.S. and all across the world. But in the U.S. right now, it feels like there's a great opportunity to produce more energy in the U.S. and see the benefits of that as well.
Yeah, I think somebody told me once that we're not getting rid of any type of energy source. we're just adding to it. So we just
Right.
continue to have ways and more ways of kind of creating this energy that, like you said, we're going to need it. We keep on, producing. So we
Yeah.
need the energies, right? So, well, Todd, I can't let you go without a little rapid fire. So,
Oh, sure.
here's my question for you. What is your favorite book?
Oh, my favorite book. I read, I'm trying to think recently. I'll go with one that's called Less is More. Read it a long time ago, and it's basically a story of just trying to do, essentially trying to do less, trying to do more with less. So that one stuck with me for a long time.
Yeah, that's good. Sometimes we're just doing a bunch of busy work and we're not like actually moving the needle anywhere. So I'd
Yeah,
be interested
yeah.
to read that book too. What about music? Got a favorite band?
So I'm in Texas, and we have a lot of good music that's from Austin. And there's a guy who sings in Austin a lot called Bob Schneider, and so I've always been a big Bob Schneider fan, and
All
so
right, shout
that's
out
yeah,
Austin. I'm gonna be in
yes,
Austin next week, so I'll have to check
yep,
it out.
yep.
Okay, okay, this one's a little trickier. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, that's tough. Um, I had a manager, or mentor a long time ago talk to me about not worrying about things you can't control. And he always stressed to me that, you can, especially as you develop in your career, you can be excellent in the areas where you have the most control, and you can push forward initiatives and help lead teams, and you can do all kinds of things. But just knowing that things are going to be outside of your control, and not worrying about them, and not dwelling on them. I always is someone that I still keep in touch with today, and that was one in early guidance that I got that was so helpful.
Absolutely. We can all use that advice today. What about you? If you were going to give somebody advice today, what would you tell them?
I really like the idea and encourage people to start small and stay focused. I feel like there's so many things that we get thrown at us throughout the day and throughout the week, and being able to start the small initiative that has big goals, and you can see the focus and you can see the progress. I love when someone has a big vision and a big goal, and they're able to break it down and basically see that success over time. So,
Yes, that sounds like you. I think we all know Todd a little bit better. Likes to start things and watch them succeed and grow. I love it. Well, Todd, I'll give you the last word. Also, make sure people know how to contact you. What's the best way for them to do that?
yeah, you can reach out directly. So it's just Todd at decarbonfuse.com. And obviously, check out decarbonfuse.com for kind of the newsletter and the resources that we have there for carbon capture and clean energy projects. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them directly.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Todd. And for everybody else, share this episode. This is absolutely relevant to us all. We all need to understand this and have resources out there. So share this episode. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. I would love to hear, if you have any topics that you want me to, cover, find people that are in a certain space, let me know. And until next time, be empowering. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.